All right. Well, good evening. My name is Evan Gregory. I think we're on. Yep. I think everything is working. I was just having some issues. My computer was not acting right. So, this is Bible Answers. It's brought to you by the North Columbus Church of Christ, located in Columbus, Mississippi. And our topic tonight is going to be on motivations or motivations really to of serving God. And a lot of times that if you read the Bible or you know anything about Christianity, you think about your motivations to serve God, about why do you do the things that you do it. And I think a lot of people has a lot of stuff to say about that topic, and some will say that maybe one should only have one certain motivation. Maybe that is the love of God and just that, and nothing else motivates us, or something along that lines. But we're going to look at what the Bible has to say about this topic, and I think what we'll find is that the Bible talks about really a lot of things that can motivate us, not just the love of God, which it is a very important motivator, and I would say it's the primary motivator. But I have on the screen here, there's again, the Bible talks about multiple things that could to motivate us to serve God, or even if we're not serving Him sincerely. What would motivate us to go through the motions, to just to show up to church, or whatever, just to do some things to play the part. And we have scriptures that talks about hell, and really the consequences of our sin, living against God, that would cause us to end up in eternal torment. And we have that fear also with the fear of God, which is also talked about quite a bit in the Old and the New Testament. In the New Testament, talks about that we should fear God, that we should live on this earth in fear, that we should live holy lives because of that. But we also have, the flip side of that is that we are looking for the reward of heaven. We're looking for that paradise, and just you know, getting off of this earth and being able to go to that place that is much better than we have here. That certainly motivates us as well. And again, we've already talked about this, but the love of God and what and that's usually based. I also have gratitude on the screen here. A lot of times, that is based on, or at least intertwined with, this idea of gratitude of what God has done for us, and also the debt that we owe to Him. But again, the things that God has done for us, the grace that is showed, the mercy that is showed on a daily basis, that helps to cultivate that love. And then we also have, and I would say this is not a good motivation, is I have on the screen as well, this praise of men or family. And so if one is doing things, if their family is a Christian or Christians, and they're only doing this to make their family happy, or they're making their neighbors happy. And we also see in the scriptures, we don't have it on the screen here, which people are motivated to preach or spread the gospel with or insincere motives, that they're looking to make a name for themselves, get rich, whatever it may be. And so there's a lot of things, and this is not an exhaustive list. You could probably think of other ways in which we're motivated to serve God, but the Bible talks very clearly about multiple things, and that they're all legitimate. There's not, I guess you would say that one is that I, if I have one of these motivations, that I'm doing something wrong, or that I should have one motivation that trumps all the others. They're all seen as legitimate. And one thing that I notice is and occasionally I read either on social media or some article or whatever it may be, that people, it seems as though that people see the loving God and fearing God as opposites, and that these two sit on the opposite ends of a sliding scale. And that if one fears God, then that means that they love God less. And as they grow in love for God, then that means that they would fear Him less. And really, the Bible doesn't really talk about that being the case. There are scriptures that talk about one loving and fearing God at the same time. For example, in Deuteronomy 6 and verses 1 through 5, it says, "Now this is the commandment, and these are the statutes and judgments which the Lord your God has commanded to teach you, that you may observe them in the land which you are crossing over to possess, that you may fear the Lord your God, to keep all of his statutes and his commandments, which I command you, you and your son and your grandson, all the days of your life, that your days may be prolonged. Therefore, hear, O Israel, and be careful to observe it, that it may be well with you, and that you may multiply greatly, as the Lord God of your fathers has promised you, a land flowing with milk and honey. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength." So if you notice here that in verses 1 and 2, God has commanded these things in which they are to be taught and observed. Verse 2, it says that you may fear the Lord your God. And in verse 5, he says, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart. So we see here that he's saying, fear God, also love God. You think about what Israel has gone through, what God has done for them, that he's brought them out of the land of Egypt. They're going into this promised land. The blessings that he's given them, the tolerance and patience that he has shown to them, but also recognize the power that he does hold over their lives, that he lays out for them very clearly, life or death. You can either serve me, you're going to receive blessing from that. If you don't, you're going to be punished for that. This is not going to work out for you. And so we see how this fear, but also this love can, be or both in existence with one another. That one can fear God as well as love Him as well. And so we see that they have these multiple motivations. That it's not just love that motivates Israel to serve God, but it's also fear. We also see in Romans 3 and verse 18 that Paul is quoting from the old, but he references those that they have no fear of God before them, that they're just going about their merry way, doing whatever they think is best, and they have no fear. And that is a problem. And you think about that in regards to not just for them personally, but as society at large, that what happens when society does not have fear for God, nothing good happens because of that. We also see in Deuteronomy 30 and verses 15 to 19 that, again, God basically gives them a choice of life or death, good or bad. They're going to either live and have good things, or they're going to perish. So we have either, they have a choice in which they can either be rewarded, and that ought to motivate them, that they're going to be rewarded if they obey, but also the consequences if they don't. Okay, that they're going to receive death, cursings if they don't obey Him. And that in and of itself, the knowing that one can receive that ought to motivate them to serve Him as well. Of course, we see that it doesn't, that even though it's laid out for them, they still choose death for the most part, that they do quite often turn away from God. But it's all laid out there, that it's up for them and for us today as well to choose who we're going to serve. We see in Colossians 3 verses 23 through 24, that's a context of Paul talking about one working heartily, and regardless of the circumstances, that one ought to do their best in their work. And he says that they're doing these things not as to men, but to the Lord. And, you're working for the Lord. And in verse 24, that they were going to receive the reward of their inheritance, that they're going to receive this a reward. Do the right things. You may not receive, fair compensation. You may not have the best boss, but you're going to be rewarded for your work, how you live your life here. And we also see in 1 Corinthians 9, verse 24 through 27, Paul talking about this idea of, basically comparing life of a Christian to a runner. That as a runner trains, that a Christian trains themselves to, act appropriately, that they mature, they discipline themselves. But they discipline themselves to receive this imperishable crown, as Paul puts it. But in verse 27, Paul also recognizes that he's going to discipline his body lest he himself should be disqualified. So again, there's that idea of the reward. We discipline ourselves, we train in order to receive that imperishable crown. But then we also see that the dangers of not training, of not pressing towards that crown, that Paul himself thought that he could be disqualified, and that at the very least stayed at the back of his mind. And so we see that we can have, it's not just all of one motivation or the other. It's not all of just love, that it's just love God, because that's not how the writers put it there, that they also fear him, that you also see the consequences of not following him. We see the motivations for reward and punishment as well. And so you might could argue that all of that stuff is intertwined with loving God, but we do see where those motivations are parsed out, that they are separated in the scriptures, and that though love and fear can work together, and apparently it does. And so we're going to look at a few more verses, looking at the motivations that we see in the scriptures. We're looking at some verses here in the New Testament. In Acts chapter 2 and verses 37, the context here, we have the Jews listening to Peter. That this was after Christ has died. He's resurrected. He's gone to be with God. He's ascended back to be with God. And so Peter here is telling the Jews that the Messiah that you were looking for, you killed him. Okay, and so if you as a Jew are listening to that, you can imagine what's going on through your head. Well, we done messed up. What hope do we have? This was it. This was our chance, to be redeemed, and now we killed him, right? And so you could think of the hopelessness that they may be thinking in their mind. Well, there's just not a lot of, anything that we could do to make these things right. But yet we see where they are. It seems like they're distraught. Like, what can we do? Is there something that we can do? We see that in verse 37. He says, now when they heard this, they were cut to the heart and said to Peter and the rest of the apostles, men and brethren, what shall we do? How do we solve this? Is there even a way that this can be solved? And we see how Peter responds to them. He tells them to repent, let every one of you be baptized in the name of the Lord for the remission of sins. That was how you would deal with this. This is how you're going to be made right with God. And so we see that I think it's pretty obvious that these people, they're reacting out of fear. They're making these statements, asking these questions out of fear, that there is some deep concern of what they have just done. And so we see that is what's motivating their question. How do we fix this? What shall we do? We also see in Romans 2 and verses 6 through 7, and this has always been an interesting verse to me, because every now and then you see something along the line, somebody saying, well, if you're in it to, because you want to go to heaven, that's wrong. There should be more to it. And you and of course there is more to it. Obviously, that one is serving God, out of gratitude, out of love, even out of fear. But we do see where people are motivated to serve God because of that reward. We see that in Romans chapter 2 and verses 6 through 7. It says, "Who will render to each one according to his deeds eternal life to those who by patient continuance in doing good seek for glory, honor, and immortality." So these people, they're doing good. What for? What's the purpose? It says that they're seeking for glory, honor, and immortality. That's their goal. That they're wanting those blessings. They're wanting that glory, that honor, that immortality. And so that, this idea of that reward is motivating them, at least partially. And so so I think some people have the idea that it's kind of selfish that if you're sitting there looking at that and say, well, at least, part of why I'm doing these things is because I want to be in heaven. To me, that seems like, well, obviously you want to be in heaven. You either have the two choices. You definitely don't want to go to hell. So obviously you want to go to heaven. And this should be some motivation for us that we don't want to receive, that if we live in sin, we definitely don't want to receive those consequences. So that is just it's a matter of, I think common sense, and obviously we would want these things rather than the opposite. And so here we see that being made plain that that those that are doing good, they are seeking these things. We also see in 1 Corinthians 9 and verse 27, we already briefly talked about this, but Paul is saying, "I discipline my body and bring it into subjection, lest when I preach to others, I myself should become disqualified." Again, this idea of becoming disqualified is present within Paul. But then we see 2 Timothy verses 4 through 7. And I think, let me turn that banner off so we can see all of it. 2 Timothy 4 and verse 7 says, "I have fought the fight, I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race, I have kept the faith." And so here, Paul, towards the end of his life, he has complete confidence. He knows what awaits him. He says, "I've fought the good fight, I've finished the race, I've kept the faith. What awaits me is a crown, is a reward." He has complete and utter confidence. He knows exactly where he's going when he dies. But yet we see that verse 1 Corinthians 9, that he still recognizes that if he did turn from God, he could become disqualified. And so he has confidence, but at the same time, he has that understanding of the, again, that fear of God. I think that he is understanding the power that God has over his life, that even though Paul has lived this life in such a manner, if he turns back to sin, all of those good things which he's done has counted for nothing, that God is still going to hold him accountable for that sin, and he can become disqualified. But it seems as though Paul, even though Paul recognizes that, he knows, he has this confidence that he's done what is right. God's going to reward him. So he's not scared. There's no dread of meeting God here, that he's perfectly confident in his salvation. And so the last slide to have is something for you all to think about: is what is your motivation? Why do you serve God? Or if you don't serve God, why do you not do that? But what would motivate you to serve Him? What would it take? And for those that are Christians that at least claim to be serving God, what is your motivation to serve me? Or are you just in it for? Maybe you're just in it for yourself. Maybe you're doing it because your family has always been Christians, and you're just going through the motions to make them happy. Or if you're sincere, if you're truly trying to serve Him, what is it? And I would dare say that probably most of you there's multiple things that come into play as to what motivates you. But the primary thing here is that we should be motivated. There should be a driving force behind us in which we would always seek to do what is right. And so, as always, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave that here. I'd respond to that. If you and if you're, and of course, if you see this not on Facebook, you see this on YouTube. Our YouTube page is North Columbus Church of Christ. But if you see this on our YouTube page, you can comment there. I'll try to keep a watch on them. But subscribe to our YouTube channel if you like. You see all of our videos uploaded there. But until next time, we'll try to keep putting these videos up. My video camera on my computer isn't acting right. I guess that was doing it last week, so I guess I have to break down and get a camera or something. But you know, uh, you at least see the PowerPoint slides here, so that's not too bad. But anyways, until next time, I hope that you all have a good day and a good rest of the week. Thanks.